Welcome. Microsoft just rolled out a blog titled Deep Dive into the DAX Query with Copilot. I'm going to unpack this for us today through a file you can download. We're going to go through 6 different query panes. Ultimately, what this is all about is how Copilot is taking us to the future. It will write our DAX for us. It will tell us all about our model. It will give me information. It will suggest things. I'm going to talk through it today. Specifically, we're going to go through these points that the blog covers. It's going to be first, show me. How to use a command called show me to essentially show you stuff that's in the model. And I'll show you what that means. Evaluate all, where you can evaluate everything in a model with one click of a button against anything you specifically want to see. Third is the one we go to of like create. Create a calculation for me. Create this thing for me. How to type it out, but how to use it correctly, where you say correct, create it, evaluate it against, and it will ultimately create the whole measure for you. And then also I'll show you a wrong way to do it and a right way. Finally, there's 2 other categories. One's called tell me more. So we'll make a calculation, then we'll prompt it to tell me more about a function. Tell me more about this thing. Copilot will see how to do that. And then finally, just a what is this doing? So beyond tell me more, if we have a DAX query, we can just paste it into it. I'll go through an example, or if we generate one with Copilot, we can then use a prompt of tell me what this is doing. It will explain it to us in very easy to understand terms. Overall, hit subscribe. I have lots of content that's going to keep coming for everything Power BI. Thank you for joining. And now let's dive into Power BI Desktop. Let's go. All right, so here we are. First thing you're going to want to do is go to the description of this YouTube video and download this file. This file is what Microsoft suggests and provides to us to use for a data set. Ultimately, we're going to be focusing on the data model on the right-hand side here and not the report. But it's important for you to understand that. Essentially, it's a big data model that has lots of stuff about a fictitious sales company and metrics about it. We're going to analyze it with Copilot. So where we're going to be hanging out today is open up this file. We're going to go to this DAX query view. At the bottom, you'll see multiple tabs for things that I've already created that we're going to talk through. This kind of aligns with the blog, but has some custom things about it. If you're not familiar with DAX query view, I'll give a quick overview right now, and then we'll dive into it. At a high level, DAX query view is a new feature that was rolled out a couple of months ago that allows us to just create DAX in a more easy to understand kind of method. There's a blog. I'll pop up a screen right here for a Learn article. The Learn article is accessible through this window that can describe what every pane means as well. It's pretty straightforward, but I want us to focus this one all about Copilot, this preview feature. So what you're going to want to do is we'll go through the example of how to use it. We're going to generate some cool stuff, and we're going to go through this process. If you get an error or an issue, you do have to have some requirements to have Copilot working. You'll need to have a premium capacity workspace. So and you have to have Copilot features enabled within your Power BI service. So ask your Power BI admin about that. But what we're going to do is we're going to dive into it. So here we are. DAX query view. Firstly, this is going to show us what's there, but then I'm going to recreate it. What is neat is this is going to show the question I asked, and we'll get more information about it. So if I just zoom in a little bit here, I asked the question, show me all product categories. Okay, so let's just start. This is the basic of Copilot. There's 2 ways you can access it. Number 1 is clicking this little icon here to write something. Number 2, you can hit Copilot Preview up here as well to write it. For this case, I'll hit this. So this first is all about show me. So what show me will do is it's going to show you data very easily. So if I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, what in the heck are these things? I can say, just very simplistically, show me territory, territory regions. Let's hit that. And what I'm looking at over here on the right-hand side is this thing called region. And I'm just saying, show me territory regions. So this is too zoomed in. So then it does it. you hit keep it, and it copies what I said. It said show me territory regions, and then we can highlight it and hit run. So there's just one region in this data. So that's not as exciting, but we'll do instead like state of providence. So what we'll do here is we'll just do the same process for show me. So show me, and I'll not even spell it correctly, territory states. We'll just see what happens with this. Might not work, but we'll see. Show me territory states. So now it's processing it, and it gives me an evaluate. I'll say keep it. Show me so it was right. So I'll run this, and it just shows me everything in any column. So the key thing here is the word show me, and then it will give you an information. In this case, we're going to be focusing on products. So I asked it, show me all the products. And we know there's devices, warranties, and accessories. Those are the different product categories. We're going to be leveraging those product categories more as we go through this exercise. So show me, it's going to very easily give you an evaluate. And in DAX Query, evaluate means like run or like a SQL select kind of vibe to it. It's not going to create anything. It's just going to run something for you and get the results. So that's easy. I don't have to type anything. I'm just giving it natural language. Now, another cool one, evaluate all. So first you're going to see this and it looks like a lot of stuff. I'll do this. I'll delete this just to keep it fresh. So if we come back over here, we know that we looked at evaluate product category. And now this is what's cool where you say evaluate all. This is the next thing in the blog. So with evaluate all, in a model, you have things called dimensions and things called measures. In this case, we don't know this model yet. It's new to us. So if we look around, we see there's different calculations and opportunities. What do all these things mean? Well, let's just ask Copilot. So I'm not even going to pick them all. Normally have to go drag and drop, make all these tables and everything. I'm just going to say, evaluate all measures and by product category. This might not work. Let's see here. Processing. Cool, it did it. So what in the heck just happened here? Every time we're gonna hit keep it, and let's just run it. So what this just did, very intelligently, is it took my question, evaluate all measures by product category, and it returned them. So now I can just see the results of what these measures are to learn more about them. So because I said by product category, it generates an evaluate statement for us. You don't have to write this out. It just does it for you. And it's saying basically select all these columns and group it by product category. And with revenue run pipeline, it gets every single measure. Then we can look down here and see, okay, devices, warranties, accessories. Here's what revenue won, revenue pipeline, forecast, and it keeps going. So now I can just get the gist of like, okay, here's all the measures in this entire model. Before, you'd have to go explore it. You'd have to go click every one of these things. You'd have to find them, drag them to a table. Not anymore. So we can look at it. As an example, we did that state territory. Let's just go off the cuff. I like freewheel and this stuff. So we'll go evaluate all measures, show results by state. Let's not even give the region territory. Let's try to make it not work. So this should be doing the same thing, but similarly to how in the previous query for show me, I said, give me all the states and territories. There's a little more defined. Well, in this case, it actually figured it out. State of Providence. I'm going to keep it. So now when I select this, run, look at that. Now it just did the same thing. Evaluate all the measures across every state of Providence. We're going to use this to get a more detailed example of some of these other examples. So that's evaluate all. When you're in Copilot, evaluate all. Very, very cool. Let's go to the next one. Now this is kind of interesting because this generated an incorrect thing, and that's going to happen with Copilot. It's still new. And this is actually what was from the blog specifically. So if we go back to this, evaluate all, for revenue one, there's device warranties and accessories. And we want to ask the question, like, I want to create a measure that just says, show me the percentage of revenue one that anything has across every category. So what that would do is it would add up all these values, get a total, and then divide this value by the amount. So I'd see like 33% to devices, 40% warranties, 20 accessories. They all add up to 100%. That's the correct way, like distributing revenue one across everything. So in the blog, it actually says, ask this question, create a measure for percent of total revenue one. Yep. And show it by product category with the revenue one. This is what it asks. And then we'll just do this as a test. When we do this. So when you're creating a measure, you're going to use the prompt of create and then show it. So create, show it. But you have to have a little bit of, you have to look at the results of it to see if it's right or wrong. And I'll show you, unless it does it differently, because AI is kind of, you know, it's not continually consistent, but it did it wrong. So I can just tell. So I'll hit keep it. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here still. So what this just did is, I'm going to delete this. It created this measure and it said define. So first create a measure that is called total revenue one, and it sum up this one, and then create a percentage of revenue one by dividing it. But this won't work. So what we can do is create something. It actually didn't even work that way. So what I can do is this. I'm going to show it again by going like this. Copy this. We're going to delete. Let's just start fresh here. So I'm going to go right to Copilot. I copy that question. I'm ask it again. See if it gives the same incorrect response. I'm thinking it probably will because it has done that so far incorrectly a couple times. But I'm going to show you how to do it right. The whole point is to show something wrong so you learn from mistakes and how to prompt things a little bit differently. So, all right, let's just now say keep it. Yeah, it can't even do it. So ultimately, if we delete this, probably. Okay, so I just looked at that code. I can kind of tell what it was doing wrong. But here's the incorrectness. I'll leave it here so when you download the file, you'll see it. But if you just run this, what it's doing is it's saying, here's the revenue one, which if we look back and evaluate all is correct. But then I'm trying to get the percent of total revenue one. It's not doing it right. It's just not. It's dividing it by itself. But you can understand this by just looking at the results and seeing it's one. So I had to figure out how to prompt it differently to get an accurate response. So I'll leave the incorrect here, and then here's correct. If I just run this, you can see it's going to show the revenue one, but then it does the revenue 1% of grand total correctly with like the percentage that it is of the whole. So here's what I had to do differently. And I'll try to recreate it as well. Let's just make a new query just for the sake of making totally new. So what I found I had to do is I said, create a measure that calculates and I had to put quotes to kind of group it together to calculate the percent of grand total for revenue one. Show it by product category. This may or may not work. So when this is running, the key thing that I did differently was I put quotes around it, really emphasizing to the engine, this percent of grand total is what I care the most about. An engine should understand percent of grand total, you have to get the grand total. And so I can look at this and kind of see if it's doing it correctly or not. So I'm going to say keep it and we'll look at it. Let's just run it and see. So it didn't do it right. still didn't. What was the verbiage here? Create a measure which calculates for revenue one and show it by product category. So again, if we come back to this, I'm going to delete it. We're going to do Copilot. So create a measure which calculates the percent of grand total for revenue one. So I put revenue one in brackets and show it by product category. So now if we do this, it is working correctly, and I'll tell you how I can tell. So I'm going to run it. Okay. So here's the key thing and this is why you have to do multiple prompts. The way that you work with Copilot is you'll prompt it, then you'll run it and see if the result is what you'd expect. If not, try a different prompt. That's what I'm trying to show you here. It's not going to be perfect every time. You have to still have some level of diagnostic ability to say, I don't think it's right, or I think it is right. But let's look at this. So what's it doing? It's defining first a variable, and this is what's key. It's saying calculate the revenue one for all opportunities. Pardon my cough. So for all opportunities, this is key, this function all. It's basically saying remove all the filters. So once we get the grand total revenue one, we can then divide it by getting the total revenue one for a specific row, dividing it by this function, and return the value, percentage of grand total. So it's cool. And again, not having a lot of DAX expertise, it's doing all this stuff for you. It's keeping it organized and creating it. So there's tons of power here with the create and show by, iteratively going about it. So now let's say we got this calculation and we want to create it. We want to add it. Well, there's this thing called code sense. And so within the code, there are these things you can click. So like right here is important. So this is making a measure called revenue 1% of grand total. And I just want to add it now. I want to add this thing to my model. So what we can just very easily do is click update model, add new measure. It's going to say, you can't take this thing back. Are you sure? I'm going to say yes. Bingo. So now over here, if I do, there you go, 1% of grand total. So now that measures in the model and we can use it. So that's a good way to create measures and add it and use it. I was playing with it and testing out even more ways to type it up. So this one, if we run this, I chose the different one, create a measure that calculates the percent of grand total for revenue open and show the results by product category. So let's just try a brand new calculation on the fly so we can see about how to evaluate this stuff, and then we'll move on. So I'm going to make down here, a new query, and I'm going to say, create a calculation, create a measure which calculates the revenue one filtered to only the top 3 states. Let's just see what happens. So now I'm just trying to ask different creative questions with the idea of it, and we'll just see what it does. So create a measure which calculates the revenue one filtered to only the top 3 states. It's kind of asking a table. It's not a specifically good question. So I wonder if it's going to give us an error or if it will actually give us something that is kind of valuable here. So it's running and it's taking a little bit more time than the previous one. It's probably going to say your question doesn't make much sense, or it's going to figure it out. So we're going to say keep it. Now let's run this thing. Okay. So this is a good example of how Copilot can help with this stuff. So I said, create a measure which calculates the revenue one filtered to only the top 3 states. So this is a perfect segue. I'm going to leave this here because we're going to jump around. So we're going to say this, I'm going to call it, so when you open up this file, it's going to be called check this one. So here's, check this, we'll do that. Because here's what the next cool step is. So we're gonna skip to what is this doing? So now we're here, and without even reading through this, I just see there's lots of stuff. And it gets an answer, but let's try this. We're just gonna go right here to Copilot, and we're just gonna say, what is this DAX calculation doing? Next part of this cool blog is saying how we can just ask Copilot to say, what is this doing? This one, there's lots of stuff happening. I could break it down and start to use my brain, but let's just see if it will just do it for us and give us something that we can read. So every time it generates stuff, it's going to start very condensed. You have to click show more. All right, what is this doing? It first calculates the total revenue won for each state. This is done by the measure total revenue by state, which sums up the revenue won for each state, ignoring any filters on the state. So up here, it's saying calculate revenue won, and it's doing it by removing all the filters on the state. So it's literally just saying exactly what this thing's doing. It's so cool. Then it identifies, let's zoom in. Then it identifies the top 3 states with the highest revenue. This is done by the variable top 3 states, which uses the top end function. Then we come back up here. So it creates this, and then it says the top end 3. Summarize this for the total revenue by each state, ordered descending. After that, it extracts the names of these top 3 states. This is done by the variable top 3 state names, which uses select columns. Right here, select column, state, get the state name. Finally, it calculates the total revenue won for these 3 top states. This is done by the measure top 3 states right here. Calculate revenue won for those top 3 states, and then evaluate for the row, just showing it. That is cool. So what is this doing? That is another prompt that's in this blog that we need to use and unlock. And again, what is this doing? It's going to give us a text readout explaining the calculation. The example in the blog uses this one, and so I wrote it, and this is another example query, so you can do this one too. I'll put it right here. And if we ask the same question, but that is cool. Click this, boom. What is this DAX query doing? It's going to process it. It's going to let us know what it's doing. That other one was more complicated. So I tried to ask a question that would generate a complicated result, and it delivered it. That's promising. Though it's not really a practical calculation, it's helpful. So here we go. Another one. It expresses top end, select, evaluate, order by. So this one thing, evaluate, you're selecting columns. The top end function, this is used to get a certain number of rows. It breaks it down for us. It tells us what's going on. That's the other part of the blog. And the final one is tell me more. So the prompt that we just discussed is what is this doing? Another prompt is tell me more. So tell me more, if we look at, maybe this is the example as well, but what a lot of these things have in common is doing something and then using this all function. So I'm looking at this, and even this previous one, you know, we're trying to calculate revenue open by all products, and you might see that and you might not really know what that means. So then we can ask the question, tell me more about the all function. Working on it. So now what this is going to do is it's going to inform us and educate us about whatever function we type in. So it's another way you use Copilot to now evaluate and help educate you on any DAX. So, you know, the all function in DAX, the type of filter that is used to clear all filters. So that's why when we're doing grand totals, it clears out everything. It just gets everything right there. It's using to calculate. It gives an example, and then you can read about it. So any DAX filter, you know, Google has the same kind of stuff, but this is now in one place. So in one spot, in summary, we can now show me stuff in the model. We can evaluate every measure in the model. We can create DAX measures. We'll have to evaluate if they're correct or incorrect. There's plenty of examples here we can look through. You can check this. You ask a crazy question and make something. We say, what in the world does this even mean? Then we can ask Copilot, what is this doing? After what is this doing, we have tell me more. And it will just tell us more about all functions or anything. So this file is saved. Copilot is the future. Hit subscribe, follow this. I'll be coming out with more content. Please like, leave a message. Any questions, I'll be happy to help. But thank you for watching. Have a good one. See ya. Bye.